In the equilibrium and acid-base modules of this course, you'll sometimes need to solve problems where you're ending up with a quadratic equation. As a reminder, a quadratic equation is where you have an x squared term, an x term, and a constant. Sometimes in general it's shown as ax squared bx plus c, and it's set to 0. So you collect all terms and you set them equal to 0. The a, the b, and the c are constants, or numbers, let's say. So to solve for x, you use this quadratic formula up here. Now it looks pretty daunting if you haven't seen it in a while, but the objective of this spreadsheet exercise is for you to solve this quadratic formula and break down the components of the formula in a spreadsheet. I've outlined it all here, and I'll go through this for you shortly. Now, because there's an x squared term, there are two solutions, in other words, two x values. Now you say there's only one x here, but the two x's, or the two answers, really come from the plus and the minus. That's what this is here. Okay. So, as an example, I want you to solve this quadratic equation where a, the constant a, is simply 1. There's a 1 in front of the x squared. B, the constant in front of the x, is 0.5. And C, the constant out here without an x term, is -1. So I've outlined them right here, or entered them here in these cells. Now the answers that you should get once you go through this, one x answer is 0.781. The other x answer is -1.281. Now you might be thinking, well, which one do I use, or which one's right? Well, when you solve the equilibrium or acid-base problem, you'll figure out which one makes sense. Quite often the negative value doesn't make any sense. Okay, so you're going to stick with choosing the positive value as your answer. The two x answers you should get down here, once you get down to the bottom of this exercise, should be these numbers here for these a, b, and c values. In other words, when you solve this particular quadratic equation. So I'm going to go through this and show you what I want you to do here. And all the instructions on what you should do are outlined in these gray areas here. So in this first step, it says in cell B10, which is this cell here, okay, so this cell here is identified as B10 because it is in column B and it is in row 10. So in this cell, we're going to enter a formula that's going to multiply -1 by whatever is in C7. So basically, we're going to multiply this guy by -1. You might say just enter -0.5. I want to keep this in formula format. In other words, I don't want you to put specific numbers in these cells here, because if you leave this in formula format, you'll be able to plug in any A, B, C value here and get an answer immediately. Because if you plug in specific values for B and A and C through these cells, or this will only be useful, all that work will be useful for only one particular quadratic equation. What I mean is, hey, let's do this. Let's enter a formula where we're multiplying -1 times whatever is in B7. So I go over here, or actually, excuse me, C7, read that wrong. So here's C7, and I enter return, and so I get -0.5. And that makes sense because -1 times whatever is in the cell is going to be negative that number. So for example, if I enter 5, it'll be -5 there. But I'm going to go back to leaving it at 0.5. Here it says in this cell, B13, enter the formula to square whatever is in C7. So we're doing B squared. So here we're going to enter the formula, enter the plus sign. Then I click on that cell, and then I square that as follows, and I get 0.25. So if this were like 10, I should get 100. And that's what I get. So I'll go back to 0.5. Next, you enter in this cell, cell B16, 4 times whatever is in B7. So we'll go back up here. So in other words, 4 times AC. So here's B7, and then we're going to multiply B7 times what's in D7, which is out here. So that's the C term. Okay. So if you multiply 4 times A and C, in this particular case, 4 times 1 and negative 1 is negative 4. Okay, so take a look at that again. Okay. And now the next one is 2A. So multiply that cell. There we go, B7. So 2. All right, so take a look at it again. All right. And here it gets a little bit more interesting. So we're going to take the things that we've already worked on and combine them. So in this cell, B22, we're going to subtract B16 from B13. So we start with B13 because we're going to subtract B16 from it. So it's got to be B squared, which is right up here, which is B13. And we're going to subtract from it B16, which is here, 4AC. So we're going to do this, that cell minus the 4AC. Okay, and that's what we get for these particular values of A, B, and C. And now the next thing we're going to do is take the square root of B squared minus 4AC, which is in cell B22. So in Excel, SQRT is the square root, and I'm going to move up to that cell, B22, and that's the square root. Now it gets more interesting because we're going to take negative b and add it to the square root of all this stuff we just did. And that's this operation here, plus. And then the next one is negative b minus. So that's that other operation, the negative. So this is where we're going to start to go towards two solutions, like the plus solution and the minus solution. So in this cell, we're going to find the cell that has negative b, which is up here, which is B10. And then we're going to add to that this cell here, which is B25. So I'll go up here, negative b, plus all this stuff. And it's really just a cell. So that's the addition part, and then we have the subtraction part. So we take that same cell up here, B10, and now we're going to subtract this square root business. Okay, so that's the subtraction operation. Now we're going to finally get to the x solutions, or the x answers. Okay, we're going to take that plus operation and then divide it by 2a. Then we're going to take that minus operation and divide it by 2a. So that's what's going on here. You see, you do the plus, you divide it by 2a, then you do the minus and divide it by 2a. So that's the last step here. So we're going to take this cell, the plus, which is B28, and divide it by B19, which is up here, which is 2a. Okay, so there's one answer, and that's correct because one answer should be 0.781, or they're close to it. So if we round that, we get 0.781. And then the other answer is all this divided, now the subtraction operation, divided by 2a, which is up here. Oops. And we should get negative 1.281, and if we round that, we'll get negative 1.281. So that's what I want you to do. I showed you exactly the steps I want you to take and the sort of general formula entries I want you to make. So if you have any questions about this, contact your instructor.